Okay. Hola, mujeres.
Hola.
So today we're here to talk about more, I would say, advocating for yourself as a woman. In past episodes, you have heard Jana speak to her story of the molar pregnancy, and also Katie Peña also have heard. But here I'm going to be talking about the perspective of having an IUD inserted and being malpositioned. So we just want to, at the end of the day, is more to that message of, hey, when you know that something's off in your body, even though you have a medical practitioner telling you that is normal, it's not normal. Like, this is going to be the third story that you hear from us saying, hey, something's off, and you have your medical practitioner telling you, like, it's okay, drink more ibuprofen, and it takes a few days or it takes a few weeks. And you're like, no, I've had a child before, or in my case, I've had two IUDs put inserted before. So like, this is not normal.
So, at the end of the day, what we want you to take away from the story we are sharing today, which is actually Rosie's personal story, is that you have to trust yourself, trust your body, and trust your gut and advocate for yourself. So, with that, I'm going to ask Rosie a couple of questions about her story because I know when she first talked to me about it, we were going our usual WhatsApp messages. That's kind of how we
this
communicate.
this is where, if we ever speaking, the topic came out from a WhatsApp conversation.
Exactly. So we were going through, our conversations. She was just telling me, like, oh yeah, I want to get my IUD, and I just don't feel well. Like it just hurts a lot. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, did you want to elaborate? And she was just like, it just hurts really bad, and like I've already taken ibuprofen and all the things that they told me to do, but it still won't go away. And then me, because I have a
High
high
tolerance
tolerance
pain. I'm
pain.
like, sure, high tolerance pain. I do too.
Right. I was just like, it's okay. I had an IUD before and that happened to me. And it took me 3 months. I mean, not gonna lie, it did take me 3 months for my body to adjust to an external object being
Hmm.
inside of it.
Yeah.
So it did take that long. So I assumed that it was like that kind of transition that she was going
Like the
through.
cramping that you feel, but
Right. But at the end of the day, it wasn't that.
it wasn't
So
cramping. Well, that.
exactly. So let's talk about when you scheduled your appointment, and you went in, like your expectation was that because you've also had an IUD before as
I've
well.
had two before.
Exactly.
That was
So
my third one.
she's no like stranger to having done this procedure before.
Right.
So you went in with the expectation that like, oh, like in the past, I'm just gonna go in, they're gonna insert it. Did you prepare? Like, how they tell you, like, oh, 30 minutes before you come in, like, take Tylenol or ibuprofen or whatever, so that, like, in case you get pain when it's being inserted?
I didn't, because I'm a big baby and I don't swallow pills and I don't drink medication until I feel like I have to. And that's that afternoon I started to. But I was just like, I'm going to feel cramping like I've had before, because I do know that I get cramping and some bleeding. But this one
So,
was different.
right. So the moment, and then you went in, you had your appointment, they inserted the IUD, and then after that, kind of like, what was, like, walk us through your ordeal per se, because it sounds like a whole ordeal, to be honest. Like,
Yeah,
I
so
didn't think it was gonna
I
be
got it
that.
in on a Tuesday morning. And I'm like, oh, like I'll just go to work. And I went to work and I was like, man, this is painful. But I was like, okay, like I just got it in. But it came 6 o'clock and I'm picking up my kids and I'm at my mom's house drinking children's ibuprofen, because I still hadn't gotten any for like bigger bottles for myself. And I'm just like, man, this is so painful. I'm like, okay, well, I guess it's different. Like, it's because usually have had the Marina, and this one was like the IUD copper, because that was another thing. I went a while with having anything because I didn't want any more hormones. We all know how we feel when we feel the hormones. But I was like, man, I know that is a different one, but I was like, I'm gonna wait one more day. So Wednesday at 2ish, I didn't go to work, so I was like, I scheduled this the day before Juneteenth. So I was like, okay, I'll have the next day to like rest, but I still wasn't. It was still very off. So I messaged the doctor's office and I'm like, hey, I've had an IUD in before, and I know you guys say it takes time to adapt, but with the type of pain that I'm feeling, I don't want it to wait to adapt. Like I don't think my body is reacting well to this type of IUD. And they're like, "Oh, did you drink more ibuprofen?" I told them everything I've done, and they're like, "Oh, just give it a couple more days. It takes time to adapt." I'm like, "But this doesn't feel normal." So that was Wednesday around
and
two
and
ish.
I'm also, like I said, like I'm guilty of that, because when she told me that she was experiencing that pain, I also, like the nurses, was like, that's normal,
Yeah,
like just
because
wait it out.
it hurted to walk, to bend, everything, and because so basically my IUD was malpositioned and it was poking my uterus. So imagine like you're walking. So what the doctor told me, I'll get to that, but she said it's like it's like having a toothpick poking your uterus. I'm like, no wonder. And because I would wake up, so that was Wednesday 2ish, right? And like 7ish is when one of the practitioners messages me back because this is always through the app because I feel like through the app I get more responses versus a phone call.
Right.
Um, and then it was just like, oh, drink more ibuprofen. And the next day, I'm just like, hey, I'm still not doing well.
I
Like
can't take the
and
pain
then,
anymore.
and also because I got super bloated. Like it was
Oh,
huge and it was hard. And I was just like, man, what's going on? Like, but it was because my uterus was getting inflamed. Like I was,
yeah,
so
like swollen type of
yeah.
thing. Ugh.
And then so that was Wednesday. Then Thursday I go to work and I'm like, yeah, this is not right. Even John
Yeah, yeah.
has
My
been told me
husband was
that
like,
day.
Was she okay? She didn't look
I
okay.
didn't look okay. I was limping. I was there and it's like I wasn't there. Like I remember we had our last meeting of the day and I was just like I was sitting there and but it was just like I was
Contemplating. You were questioning like your life, contemplating your life, like
and I
what is
was just
happening? I
like
don't feel well.
and yeah, so that day I of course I messaged again and I said I need to get this oh. So in that day in the morning, I messaged them like, I need to get this removed. I don't want my body to adapt to it. Like I don't care how long it takes. I just don't want it. I don't. And they're like, oh. Then they message me back like, we don't recommend you removing this yourself. I'm like, I'm not
Yeah,
asked telling you
that
that I
I'm
wanted to remove myself. I wouldn't have even told you. Like I'm asking you for an appointment. And they're like, oh, we're fully booked. We have no appointments. And then that afternoon, that was like in the morning and afternoon, I get actually a message from them like, oh, we're gonna call you. Um, but then they're like, oh, we actually spoke to my because of my I usually have seen a nurse practitioner through all these past 12 years. But she wasn't since she's close to retirement. She didn't have any appointments to see any women that aren't pregnant. So
and
it was a different.
this doctor wasn't this your midwife is what you
Hmm.
call her, right? The person that you normally see wasn't the person that actually inserted, like
Right,
placed
right,
the IUD,
yeah.
right? So
So
that's
she was
also
so she was the one that was like, okay. That's when she actually took the time to read my chart and said, like, send her to get an ultrasound. It needs to be ASAP because I'll tell you more when she tells me that because there's more to that. So that was Thursday afternoon. They're like, okay, you need to call this number so you could get an ultrasound. You need to go to the hospital. And then I call and they're like, oh, the one nearest you is not till Monday. I'm like, I can't wait till Monday. I'm like, what? Anything. I'm like, I could drive 25 miles like the furthest. Because you know how
yeah,
sometimes like, oh,
yeah.
wait, how many
At this
miles?
point, you're like
And
desperate,
they're like,
so in pain that you're just like, I don't care what I need to do, but I
yeah.
need it
I'm like,
removed.
I'm in Ada. What about the one across the street?
Yeah,
I could
yeah,
go right now if
right.
you want me
Mm.
to. And they're
Oh,
like, no, you the closest one is tomorrow at noon. So this is Thursday. So I got that at noon on a Friday.
mm.
So I go and I was in tears when the lady was doing
The
because
ultrasound. Oh,
it was an
pushing,
abdomen.
because she was
The
pushing your.
abdomen was not as painful, but when she did the vaginal ultrasound,
Oh,
I was in pain. I was like, oh my gosh. And the tech was like, she's like, really? Like that hurts? I'm like, yeah, like I've been in pain, like, and I don't know why, but this hurts. Like but it was because
she was pushing.
poking.
Yeah,
Yeah, she
yeah,
was
pushing
pushing.
up in your
She was touching
uterus with the
exactly.
IUD.
So I get my results like at 1ish. It didn't take that long. And I call the office. I'm like, hey, I got my results. It says malpositions IUD. I need to get this removed. Like I know it's Friday, but can I get in, or
Can
is
I go to
this,
the
or can
emergency
I
room?
said to the urgent care, and they're like, oh, they don't do that at the urgent care. They're like, but the doctor, and they're like, but we can't see you, we can't give you an appointment till the doctor reviews it. I'm like, but it says in my chart, like, can you guys just have someone look at it?
Someone,
Like,
yeah.
I legit felt like driving to their office. I'm like, my house is nearby their, like, I'm like 5 minutes away from that doctor's office. But then they call me like around 3, and they're like, oh, we're so sorry, but we don't have any availability till Monday. Can you wait till Monday? I'm like, well, it's gonna be a
Mm,
long weekend, but I mean, you guys don't have any appointments. Like, well, and then also all the messages they would write to me. If you can't bear it, if you are bleeding, this and that, go to the emergency room. But we all know that it's an OB that does is an emergency room.
mhm.
So, I was like, well, like,
That
this
it
is
felt
stuff they
that
don't
way.
do there. Like, like, I'm not bleeding. I'm not like, I'm still like, walking is painful, and I've been crying this and that, but
But the pain is intolerable at
yeah,
this time, at this point.
I'm like, I don't feel like I still need to go land in an emergency room, because it's not like I'm not crawling, or I haven't passed out, or I'm
Mhm.
not excessively bleeding. Like, to me, that's why I can say, like, I have high tolerance too, because I'm not the type like, oh my gosh, I gotta go to the hospital or go get checked. Like, it has to be something totally wrong for me to like take that step. So that was Friday. Then Friday 3-ish, they gave me an appointment for Monday morning. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna try, go through the weekend. But it was so weird. 11 p.m., I get the phone call. 11 p.m.
From your
Who just
actual
calls you at
doctor,
11 p.m.?
your
Yes, the
midwife.
one. Yeah, the one that usually sees me. And she's like, I'm calling to see how you're doing. I'm just catching up on your messages and saw your results. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Um, and that no one gave you the appointment. We should have given you an appointment. That's where I'm just like frustrated with this office, because I'm like, I've been asking them for an appointment for the past 3 days, and then they still see my results and they still don't give me an appointment. And I understand that, yes, malpractices happen. I signed my
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 waiver.
my consent, but I was asking for an appointment. Like, you guys to send me to like a different office, this and that. So she was apologizing, and she said, "Do you?" And then I asked her, I'm like, "Hey, do you think it's safe for me to wait through the weekend with the way it's positioned?" And she's like, "Oh, let me talk to another doctor, and I'll call you back." And she called me back. She said it's okay. She said that it's okay, but but if you feel like you need to go to the ER, go, because I can imagine the pain you're in, because that's when she told me it's like a toothpick is poking your uterus. I'm like, I had not came to that conclusion, but that's exactly how it feels, because I
It could,
feel
yeah, and I feel like if had you waited longer though, like through the weekend, like she said, like a toothpick poking your uterus, like what if it actually perforated, like it went through
that
your
was my
uterus? That was
fear.
gonna be worse because then you're
Yeah,
gonna need surgery after this. Like,
exactly. So that's what she's like. Well, if a financial, if if it's not a financial burden for you to go into the ER, I I would do it. And this, and I was like, well, it's not. I'm like, for my safety, like, I don't care at this point how much it costs. Like, if you think, and she's like, well, you could wait it out. The way it's positioned won't do anything to your uterus. Your uterus could go back, this and that.
hmm,
But as you said at the beginning, trust your gut. I was like, something in my gut tells me that she's on call at the hospital tonight, because why is she calling me at
at
11
11
p.m.?
p.m. Yeah.
And I told my husband, I was like, man, I just feel like she's there, and let's just go. And he's like, well, are you ready to be there all night? Because if you wait till the morning,
We all know, yeah.
and then I'm like, I understand it'll be quicker we go in the morning, but let's let's just go now. Because that was another thing, since like, and when I would wake up in the morning, it wouldn't feel as bad, because I would be laying down, so
Right. But the moment you got up,
I didn't have it touching me. But throughout, like, at nighttime, that was the worst. I was like, oh my god, like, that was when I was feeling the worst, because it was that uterus was already being, so it would get
it was
getting swollen
swollen.
through
Yeah.
the day. Um, so we went, and two doctors came in asking me the same thing. What happened? Why am I there? And I'm like, Everything is in my chart. Like
Yeah, like
I
I've
go
spoken to so many people
the
by now.
no, but like they were for some reason they I was like, yeah, when I got it inserted the I said the clinic because it's like it's not a hospital, but I don't like I wish like it wasn't I guess the medical office. I don't know, like it wasn't a doc in hospital or anything. Like I just called it like the clinic, like when you go to your and they're like, oh, so which clinic? I'm like, no, it's the same industry, like it's the same system. Everything is in my charts. Like the
Yeah.
every single note is in there. Like stop coming to ask me what happened, when I got this done,
Yeah, and I
where are
am,
my
and
results.
I think that's the one thing that I also get frustrated about, because when I was going through my molar pregnancy and they removed my the molar,
Hmm.
essentially, it was gonna be my doctor and that did it, and she ended up, because she knew everything that was going on, and she was like my actual OB. But before she came in to do that, to do the procedure, like I had nurses asking me like every single time, like, oh, like, so why are you here? And I'm like, really? Like
Read my
every
chart.
like, isn't that so frustrating? Like all my information, everything I'm going through, it's on my chart. So why can't you just take the time before you come into the room to read it and then come in prepared, and then I can answer any other questions you may have, but
Right.
not the whole story about what's going on, especially when you're going through like a miscarriage, right? Like asking
Hmm.
a woman that's coming in for
To
something like
remind
that
her.
and remind her that she is losing a baby. It's like they have to be a little more mindful about
Yeah.
those things, right? So
Yep.
I can feel your frustration, like
Yep.
read my
But
chart.
all of that was just to come and tell me, oh, well, we don't do this. We will have to call an OB from your office. I'm like, exactly. Like, like, and I was like, all right, can you guys please contact Marianne?
your
I'm
your
going to say
midwife, you right?
my midwife first. You're like, oh, but it all depends who's on call. I'm like, hey, just to give you a backstory, she did call me at 11 p.m. today. It was like almost 1 a.m. I just need you guys to try to contact her first. Oh, well, is she part of, again, well, is she part of this? I'm like, yes, like it's from that same office. Like everything is related to this. Like, I don't know why they thought I had gone to something else or, anyways. But um, then she showed up. Guys, like, I was in pain, but I saw that woman walk through that door and
And
it
you were
was like a
relieved.
relief. I was like, I'm
Oh my
so
god,
happy
to
to see
see
you.
you.
And then I was just like, I'm so glad that's gonna be you. And I was like, it just makes me feel I was like and it's more comfortable. I know I had an appointment on Monday already, but I was like, I just feel like my vagina. That's what I told her.
You know my
Cause
struggles.
because I mean for my other two kids, like for everything, she's always been the one that has treated me. So and then she took it out right away. It was super fast. But I'm so glad I went on that
That
Friday
Friday
evening
night.
already Monday early morning because for that whole weekend I felt like I had just given birth. Like
Oof.
it was so painful. Like I was like I would have had to miss time from work just because of this. Like if I would have waited till Monday, so I would have already had a non-productive weekend because I would have been having to lay in bed because I couldn't I was have to wait till Monday, and then I would have had more unproductivity
Yeah.
because I would be having to miss work because my pain was like I was still limping, like drinking teas and ibuprofen through the weekend, like
For
putting
something that should have
sweat.
been a regular
Exactly.
procedure.
That's why I was just like,
Because so many
this could have
women,
been avoided. Like I was like, I understand because I know you guys are probably listening, like, oh, Rosie, that happens all the time. But I was just like, I got caught up with why couldn't they just give me
an
the
appointment.
appointment?
Like,
Like
why can't
I've
you
been
just see me
telling
now?
you,
It's an emergency. It's an
or even
emergency
that
to
Friday.
you because
Yes,
you're
I
feeling it and
know
you know
other
your
people
body.
have it worse than me, but I have been asking you for a couple of days, and that's why, like, my midwife, like, she still kept apologizing, and she like gave me a hug, and she was like, "I'm so sorry this happened because it shouldn't have gone this far." I'm like, exactly, like I don't feel like it was necessary. So, that was I go to the weekend, but Monday I still did go to my appointment. Like I wasn't gonna cancel it with to get it removed, but I still went because I wanted them to still give me like reassurance that like, hey, I went to the office and I wanted you guys to understand what happened, and also I want someone else to read my chart and see. And they're like, oh, your uterus will go back to
You needed
normal.
kind of like a
That
follow up. Like, okay,
exactly.
this happened. It
And
was
they and
removed
they
for like
and they
what's
were like,
next.
oh, so you got it removed already? I'm like, yep.
I'm
Bye.
just here to know like what's the next step, what's the
and
follow up, and how
and
like am I
then
gonna get better?
the person that takes you in, the medical assistant, she was the one that prepped me to get it inserted, and she was like, "Oh, I remember you were here," and she saw my frustration. She's like, "Oh, asking how you're doing this and that," and then I was like, "If you guys would just give me a freaking appointment, I would have." Like
Yeah,
she saw I
right,
was upset
right.
because unfortunately I kind of took it out on her, and I got emotional. I started crying. I was like, "Oh," and then she's like, "Oh, we're gonna take this to our team meeting. This is actually a
It's kind of like a I don't know lesson
like
learned or it's like
a
patient.
situation, like a case study that we're gonna talk about this because we just been so overwhelmed with appointments that we can't get people in, and this is something that we should have had you come in because you were having it, and then it was and no one really like took the time to say, yeah, come in. And even
To fit you in.
the person that inserted my IUD, to this day she still hasn't even sent me a message to say anything like, hey, apologies. Like it was another
Yeah.
person that had to.
The OB that
Yeah,
actually
I think
did
the
it.
person that was reading my chart was like, hey, I know that she's your patient, but she's not getting the attention, and she keeps messaging us. Come
Right.
do something
Right.
about it, because I was like, I have over 20 messages in 3 days because I kept insisting because I'm like, I wanted to understand, okay, I'm not just like I really. So yeah, that was the
That
the the story, and now they're like, oh, and that day they're like, oh, do you want to get it inserted again? I'm like, no, like I don't want anything in there right now. Like I don't, like I
I
don't.
need a
I
break
was
from
like,
this.
I was like, this is gonna be my natural birth
Right.
control, and I don't even know if I want a dick in me right now for for a couple.
This
And I
was
did,
traumatic. Like
and
you
I
want me to go
did,
through this again?
and I did go through a couple of weeks. I was just telling my husband like, I'm not ready. Like I don't feel good to still like, because I was like, I still.
Rightfully
Yeah,
so. My goodness.
because it's like I legit feel like I just gave birth because it was like so, I don't know, like it just
It
felt.
was painful and
Yeah,
swelling and like yeah,
exactly.
not normal.
Yeah,
Period. Not
exactly.
normal.
So yeah, and I've been telling John, she's like, oh, so what are you gonna do? I'm like, you know what? I still don't even feel like I'm so hurt. So I'm like, I feel like I'm just gonna go to the ER and get what I need to get done. And
Not necessarily like again, this is like a personal thing, like not an advice
yeah,
that we're giving people. Just so you know.
because
Disclaimer, this is a
yeah,
personal.
yeah, just personal story. But then as I share the story sometimes, like I'm not alone. Like there's people that do go back just because they have lost so much trust in the system here because
And
I
and medical
I just
practitioners,
feel
right?
like it's all to make money. I'm like, I have to pay all this money to get the ultrasound done when if I could have just having it removed, I wouldn't have to pay over $1,000 for an ultrasound. I wouldn't have to pay the ER. Like I understand. But it's just like I feel like is this a setup to just have more people have to pay more money? Because it's like everything nowadays is like, oh, there's no appointments, go to the ER. Oh, we don't do ultrasounds at the office anymore, go to the hospital. And it's just like I remember before, like I would even my midwife, she's like, oh, remember I used to give you ultrasounds at the office? They
We
don't let
can
us
no
do that
longer
anymore.
do
And
that.
she even mentioned to me like, can you imagine the women that have infertility and they have to get ultrasounds done all the time? How expensive it gets. I'm like, oh my gosh. Because that was something the weirdest thing. Like when I checked in for the ultrasound, they already told me how much it was.
Wow.
Like on my screen, I was like, I usually don't get that right away. She's
Until
like,
after.
yeah, so that's why I knew how much it was. And yeah, so it's
Wow.
I to me it's still fresh. So I'm like, I don't and my midwife had told me when I was at the ER, she's like, oh, make sure you try to get a oh my gosh, our routine. What is it called? Our pap smears and
Oh
all of
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but you don't have any appointments. You're booked out. And she's like, oh, sometimes I do work through my lunch. So just make sure you tell them that. And I did. And then they called me back and they're like, yeah, she told us you didn't say that. So we're not authorized to give you an appointment. And the lady that called me, she had an attitude. Like, I was like, I don't know if I have this like label at this office that they're like, this person is being pushy. And because even the when I went to the appointment on that Monday, the lady told me that it was actually OB. It wasn't a midwife. Like they had gave me an appointment with the OB instead of a midwife. She was like, "Oh, I hope you could trust us again." So I
That's
just
kind of
feel
hard. I mean, yeah.
just when I feel like when the OB's telling me that I hope you could trust us again and still come back, I'm like, that's it. That's like basically you saying you made a mistake, not the whole like the malposition, because I understand we're
The
humans. It was
malpractice.
just the way it was handled.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah,
So
and again,
always
like,
advocate for yourself. You know
mhm,
your body best. And if you get trust your gut, you're getting those red flags, you're right, because you know your body. You live it in it 24/7. So
agree 100%. That's kind of why we wanted to share the story today. Like hop on and that
yeah.
be our episode, just because this is the third time something
Hopefully no more
similar.
stories like that for us, but and then that you guys are really
Yeah.
listen to your body.
For sure. So again, third time something like that happens to me, to Katie, and then now to Rosie, where we go in and where we ask for things that, because we know that our bodies, like we know our bodies, and we need the support and we need the help, but then we're not listened to, and we're kind of like disregarded. Like, no, we know better, so just wait. To just
Hmm.
wait for an appointment. Or like, no, that's normal. Or
Just
like,
drink more ibuprofen.
yeah,
More
take some
ibuprofen. Like,
Tylenols, take some ibuprofen, or like Katie's case was like, oh, try again. Like those are things that we have to be a little more mindful
yeah, I
about.
remember when I had my daughter, I called in and I told them like, hey, I was taking a bath, and they were like, oh, that was just your mucus plug. Like, okay, I called them like, hey, I'm feeling some pain, and when I pee, something's coming out, and like I just don't feel good. They're like, oh, drink a glass of cold water, drink on your left, lay down your left side. And I just kept saying like, this is not like normal.
Normal.
Like something's telling me like get up and go. And I went to the hospital, and thank God I went, because my daughter had pooped in me. So
Hmm.
every that the thing that was peeing was her poop. So it's like, the NICU was there, and like for me to give birth to her, because they were all like, and she couldn't have swallowed it. So can you imagine she would have swallowed that? So another case of like, always trust your
Sure,
gut,
God. And
follow your
yep.
heart. I
Hmm.
know um that it's like I feel like, oh my gosh, and someone's listening to this and they're in the medical field, like, no, so much respect. It's just like just saying that like everyone's human, and we have the blessing that God tells us, like, is like telling us, do this, do that, or trust in your gut, because is that for a reason. So it's just to not brush off when you get those feelings, because it's the higher mighty speaking to you for a reason. So
So with
yeah.
that, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you at our next episode.
And make sure to give us a rating or a comment, and also send us a DM of any stories that you would like to share, or if there's anything that you would like us to share, like, hey, I want to talk about XYZ. So thank you so much. Hasta
La
la
próxima.
próxima.
Ciao.
Ciao.